Welcome to the HR Empowerment Podcast, where we will uncover strategies and new insights from HR professionals who discuss up-to-date regulations, best practices, and the most pressing topics like diversity and equity, leadership, dealing with difficult situations, and much more that affect your bottom line and business. Thanks for joining us.
Hey everybody, Wendy Sellers here, the HR Lady. Welcome back. We are here in episode 4 of 5 in the series on integrating ritual healing and, above all, equity in the workplace. So welcome back, Dr. Vin.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, I have a very important question and a huge topic that we have to squeeze in about 7 minutes. And it's about, understanding and respecting diverse gender identities and sexual orientations in the workplace. So, our listeners are all over the board, but most of them are wearing the HR hat, if that's not 100% their role. What guidance can you give HR professionals, business owners, managers to support these diverse employees?
The word that comes to mind is grace. How do we give each other grace as we are learning new ways of talking and naming and being with folks of diverse gender identities, right? And it's so important in my opinion, for grace to be extended all across the board, that it's to the folks who are vulnerable in their gender identities, who are trans or non-binary, who are coming and needing support, like they need grace. And also the folks who may not have had any encounters with trans or non-binary folks, they need grace. They need grace for their learning. And there has been such a polarization and around language when we talk about gender, right? And I want folks to really have the opportunity to be learners, to get curious, to not have to feel defensive about like having dumb questions, for example, that if HR is really trained well and is fluent in, because the language is changing all of the time, right? And so if HR can support, can offer trainings, can offer lunch and learns, can offer resources where you're supporting people who are on the learning end of the gender identity spectrum, right? They're just learning about pronouns. They're just learning about how to be inclusive, and have them not feel shame that they don't already know, because everybody has to start somewhere, right? And then also in really protecting the most vulnerable populations at work, right? And by sticking up for them and letting them know that it's safe for them to come and say, hey, I need your support because so-and-so keeps using the wrong pronoun for me. Could you talk to them? Things like that, right? So that there's this grace that's extended to everyone across the organization as we all go through a transition of really becoming more inclusive, more gender inclusive.
Yeah, as you're talking, I'm also thinking HR or whoever's wearing the HR hat, do some role playing with the manager or even with the employee who's coming to you to say, okay, let's practice this conversation, or role play with the person that you're trying to teach.
Yes.
I really feel like role playing can get us out of so much uncomfortable conversations because we practice the conversation. By the way, this works at home too. Like, oh, I'm just going to tell them that. And then you open your mouth and you're like, that's not what came out at all. And now I've just insulted somebody. But I do think you're 100% correct. There's so much change, and it's continuing to change. This is the space that I'm in, and is in HR, and there's terminology regarding gender and sexuality that is sometimes, I would say, at least on a weekly basis, I hear a term that I'm like, I have never heard that before. And if anybody's ever met me, me, I always have something to say about something. And even then I'm like, I freeze up, like, I don't know what that means, but I'm learning to say, hey, I don't know what that means. Can you explain it to me? It's having the grace. I love that terminology. JC, you have some stats for us?
Yeah, absolutely. HR professionals who implement strategies to support LGBTQ IAAP employees and challenge heteronormative practices can achieve a 45% increase in employee engagement and a 36% reduction in turnover among LGBTQ IAAP staff as reported in a 2023 survey by the Human Rights Campaign Foundation. Back to you.
Those are huge numbers. Huge. 36% reduction in turnover. 36% of your people are now staying because of these activities. That means you don't have to replace them. You don't have to waste time interviewing. You don't have to waste so expensive to recruit. That's so much money. Never mind even talking about the 45% increase in employee engagement, which means, I don't know, your goals that are actually getting done at work. What are your thoughts on that, Dr. Vin?
I mean, I think it's beautiful. And I think that, we know from nature and from studying biology that diversity increases productivity, it increases resilience, it increases creativity. When we have people of diverse experience in our workplaces, right? When there's a plethora and a tapestry of lots of different kinds of experiences, it just adds to organizational wisdom, right? We're able to tap that as a resource. And I just want to say, I believe in paying trans people, to do educational work. And so I want to just caution people, don't just ask people for their free work, but do bring in qualified trainers to help you have these practice conversations and be able to support people, so that, because I think that so many people are so afraid of getting it wrong. And so therefore there's a lot of missed opportunity for connection and conversation.
Well, speaking of trained experts, you're it. Tell our listeners, what you do and how you can help them individually or for the business.
Yeah, well, my favorite thing to do is help people really embody, and that means bring their values and their principles, the things that matter the most to them, into presence, and to be able to stand in their power. And so the places that they feel afraid, or they feel insecure, or they feel shame, or they just feel kind of shaky, to really help that become core and central to who they are and how they show up, so that there's not a misalignment. There's this incredible alignment when we're putting our values and our practices and we're really making the meaning that we want to make as leaders, right? We're having the impact that we want to have, and we are not just talking, not just saying the values out loud, but practicing them and leading by example, and being the person that we want to be in our company, right? And that is that's super powerful. And you've probably had that experience of encountering a person who just they seem like they have themselves, right?
Yeah.
They're not shaky. They're not, they're just very present, and you can trust them. And our nervous systems relax around people like that. So that's what I love to do, is help leaders get there, so that they can really hold that space and be the leader that they want to be.
Just listening to your voice, I'm feeling more relaxed. So thank you. And thanks everyone for listening to episode 4 of our 5-part series. In our next episode, our final episode, we're going to cover building a culture of empathy and connection. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for joining the HR Empowerment Podcast, brought to you by Aurora Training Advantage. We hope you've gained new insight and strategies to navigate the HR profession. We look forward to you joining us again on the HR Empowerment Podcast.